Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem, and a special one for you today. Before we get there, though, a little tiny bit of housekeeping. In conjunction with the release of this show, we will be putting out with about the same time or within a few days. Working on that one right now, but we did a follow-up show with Caliph, and we're calling it the 201 show. The first one, the bonus show that we did, was really built for pilots who were just leaving the nest. This one is now much further along, so you're starting to thermal and deal with turbulence and flying XC, and this one has a lot of great topics as well. Barbecue, bowling, and baseball, spook early and often, what is turbulence, how to map it, the way of the butterfly, and a lot more. I really like how Caliph thinks about flying and teaching and mentoring. He's got a really cool thing going on out there in the Northeast. Really stoked community, and so these are his concepts, sometimes his own, sometimes taken from other places, other books and other things he's read and seen, but they're great concepts that are really fun to explore, and that's what we did. So I think regardless of where you are on the learning spectrum, we're all in some place in the spectrum. It's some really valuable stuff there. So keep an eye out for that one. That's for subscribers. And as always, you don't have to do anything to be a subscriber of the show. Hopefully someday you can support it. But if you can't, that's totally fine. Just send me an email and I'll set you up with a lifetime subscription. And you can have access to all those bonus shows. We're trying to put out more of those these days. And it's a lot of fun to create these for different aspects of where you are in your own bit of flying. So huge thanks to Caliph for putting so much thought into these and making them happen and sharing the stoke and the knowledge. This show is with my good friend Paul Guschlbauer in our continuing series of taking a walk and fly down memory lane for the Red Bull X-Alps. Of course, we just had the 2023 Red Bull X-Alps, and that was lightning fast. Paul has now done 8 of these. He started in 2011 when he was truly a pup flying, and that one went really well because the weather was terrible, but he also talks about how poor of a pilot he was. He was pretty brand new to the sport and decided, yeah, this looks really cool. I want to go on this adventure. And he did well, and he got third, and that led to the Red Bull sponsorship and athlete sponsorship and a lot of other stuff. He's very good at working the sponsorship angle, but that also put a ton of pressure on him to do well and perform well in the 2013 race, which didn't go nearly as well and really struggled both mentally, well, mostly mentally. Physically, he was still a beast, but so he talks about that, and we go through each event all the way up to the most recent, which was a furious thrash through the X-Alps, the fastest that had ever been done. And we talk about that, just the level and how things have changed with gear and training and the professionalism of the team, and going from, mandatory just one supporter to as many as you want. There's been a lot of changes in the race over the years, but the biggest one is just how fast athletes are capable of doing it these days. So we had a ball with this. It's a long one, but it's, God, I love this race, as you all know I do. And I know these talks about the X-Alps aren't everybody's cup of tea, because it's just really at one very extreme end of the sport. But it's pretty fun to see what Aaron and he are doing with the Vonderbird, and just the explosion of hike and fly around the world, including my own race here, the Global Rescue X Red Rocks, which we just had, which was a hoot. So I think you'll enjoy it. It sounds like this is seems like the future of the sport, which is really exciting. So enjoy this crazy, very fun, very entertaining talk with Paul Guschlbauer. Cheers. Paul, we've been talking about doing this for an awfully long time. It's finally coming to fruition, but nice to see you, and nice to have this chat with you about taking a walk down memory lane with the X-Alps.
Yeah, hey Gavin, I'm happy that we finally make it happen. And it's good to talk to you again. Has been a while, and I'm happy about your invitation to your
Yeah, and it
podcast.
sounds like you've got a podcast now going with Aaron with the whole Vonderberg thing, which I've been watching very closely. Aaron was just here. He defended his title. He won the Global Rescue X Red Rocks, was shredding, and he was really sick. I was impressed that he was able to perform that well when he was so sick. But he told us all about it. He gave a presentation here and he told everybody about it. It sounds fantastic. You and I were just talking about it before we started recording. So wish you guys the best of luck with that.
Yeah,
That's a lot of
yeah,
fun.
it would be an honor for me if I can at some point interview you for the Vanderbilt Hike and Fly podcast. That would be
Well, now
really
you got
cool.
all this professional gear. We
Like
got to
getting
put it
to
to
that
use,
point.
man. That's yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's great. It's great one more time to get the chance to put this setup here because I only did 3 podcasts so far for our podcast. So I have to get used to all this gear here, but then yeah, I'm sure this will be
Where are
nice
you guys putting it
recordings.
out? Just for listeners of the mayhem here who may not be aware of it. Where do they find it?
It's basically everywhere. It's on Spotify, on
And it's called the
Apple, like
Vonderberg.
all these channels, and yeah, you put in a Vanderbird Hike and Fly podcast, and then we'll show
Cool.
up.
Well done. I'll put it in
Yeah,
my.
thanks, guys. If you listen to that, the first one was with Paul Takac, and second one with a young guy who just started Hike and Fly racing at a Wonderbird event, and yeah, it's really cool stories, and yeah, looking forward to do some more
Yeah,
of this.
cool.
And of course, the third one now with Aaron talking all about what Wonderbird actually is and what we want to do
Yeah,
with it.
cool. Well, it's some good vision there, and it's neat to see it come to fruition. And nice to have another platform other than the X-Ups. I mean, there's lots of hike and fly now all over the world, but it's cool to see what you guys are doing. It's a really great concept of it's similar. I mean, ours is a 3-day race. It's a stage race, but I think you and I and Aaron all share the same vision of, we need something that's a building block and that's also something that's accessible to everybody, not just the elite of the elite, which is really what the X-Alps is. And so it's fun to see it happen. And it's fun to see so many people that are just getting into the sport finding the love for it and exploring nature and being able to do it regardless really of their skill level yet.
Yeah, I mean the point is like over the years, and we will talk about what I have experienced in the next couple of minutes, I guess, with Hike and Fly. I've done, I don't know, like apart from the X-Alps, crossed the Alps multiple more times than than just that. I think it's now 10 times that I went all across back and forth the Alps, and then also in the Himalaya and wherever. So and what I figured out is like a successful Hike and Fly athlete or person who really can perform well is somebody who is very much in the moment of what he does and is able to not only exhaust himself to the max and not being able to think clear anymore. It's exactly the opposite. It's like keeping this perfect balance with your body of being still there, being able to see birds, clouds, feel the wind and all this, still be hiking fast, and then take a good decision of when is the right moment to take off and all this. So this is very much in tune with nature, what we do here, compared to, running a marathon on the road. Has nothing to do with
Mm.
nature. So it has only to do with your own limits, maybe, but nothing to do with the implementation of yourself in
Yeah.
nature. And this is the key, and this is why I personally think hike and fly is just an amazing sport. Of course, not everybody in the world will probably fly at some point, and maybe that's also good. But to promote the sport and its specifics and values and all this, I think this is really important, and it's a very good example for a thing where we get in tune with nature again, and I think it's a very
Mm.
important thing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, I love the saying that in the X-Alps, what's so addictive about that and just hike and flies in general is the places you find yourself are just frequently totally absurd. You just,
I would never be here if I was just roaming around, or even just hike and fly. If I was just hiking and flying, I wouldn't be here, because you're there at crazy times of the day and night, and just all the things that go together, especially with the weather. You just find yourself in remarkable places doing remarkable things. And like you said, it is quite a unique. I mean, I don't know what other sport would be close to it. Maybe biathlon, where you're going really hard, and then you've got to totally dial it really fast into a completely different, you've got to go flow state. You've got to turn the heart rate way down. You've got to be thinking and strategic, and you can't just be
Yeah,
grinding it
absolutely.
out. You can't just go like you do in an Ironman, or even a Tour de France or something. You
Yeah.
can't. That's not the game. You'd fail miserably.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point. It's exactly the point. And what you just said about the places you find yourself suddenly, like at 9 p.m. landing after still being like just having flown an 8, 9, 10, 11 hours till, I don't know, like things I
Yeah.
can't even like moments that I can't even describe right now. And what is it? Like it's this, in the end, that's pure adventure. It means that you're in a space where you would never go to, like in a normal
You would
life.
never. Yeah. It was
It's
just
like
you
the
just.
adventure definition
But
for
you
me.
can't replicate it if you're not in a
Yeah,
race
yeah, it's not
environment. It's
replicate.
really tough.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah. It's just it's that you get you get a chance to get out of that comfort zone. That you It's so hard to live every day, and we are striving for safety all the time. Everything we build, everything we do is just like, let's not change anything and then let's stay same. But then suddenly that is what happens. You're suddenly changing because you have to, and then you experience the craziest, coolest things
Yeah,
ever.
absolutely. Well, you said it, you wouldn't be able to describe it, but now we're going to ask you to. So your first was 2011, and you talked about this on one of our earlier podcasts. What I find so amusing about it is, you were more a mountain biker and professional athlete in mountain biking, and then you were pretty new at the paragliding side of things, but you'd seen the race. I don't know if that was 2009 or 7, but you'd seen the race. Okay, I'm going to do this. But what cracks me up is, you weren't the pilot that you probably even should have been, right? Do I have that right? In 2011, you talked about, your experience level. You were fit, but your experience level from the flying side was what, just a couple years, right? Or was it even that?
So the comparison to this year's X-Alps is the best actually to describe it. If with what I've been and this in my flying, or where I've been in my flying in 2011, if this would have been this kind of X-Alps as we've seen it this year, I would probably maybe made, like not becoming last, but like second last or
Like, might have been
something.
eliminated.
Because I might have been probably eliminated, because that's what it was. Like back then, I was a paragliding beginner, like absolute beginner compared to all these guys that were there. But I I have proven before that I can, do these standard cross country flights, 200 kilometers plus. I was still young. I mean, I was safe because I was a test pilot, but I was not able to fly in the Alps with just like that, like we are flying now, really, like all day long in all these conditions, being able to adjust to that. So that has definitely changed. I was able to fly back then. I was safe, but I was, compared to the others, that was the difference. I was really strong. Like I was really fast. I was really strong. I was really tough. I was and also super dedicated. So that was something I think the other guys missed, because paragliding pilots, there's nothing bad about paragliding pilots, but paragliding pilots are still paragliding pilots. And I came from a world where 8 hours of endurance training a day, 5 days a week, or let's say 5 to 6 hours was normal, and there were not many paragliding pilots, or I would say at least in X-Alps Zero, that would do that.
Yeah, it was Tom and Chrigel both talked about that. I mean, even from my own experience in my first one in 2015, when I showed up to the pre-week in 2015, I could pretty much write off half of the people. Just from the fitness side. You could just look at them and okay, they're not trained. That they're gonna start failing day 6, day 7, day 8, and it's just not that game now. It's
Yeah, it's also a different kind of training. It's not training like you go and say, well, now I'm training for half a year or a year, and then you're
yeah,
fit, fit to run up your local mountain in a good time. That's
yeah,
also fit, but it's not X-Alps fit. X-Alps fit means there is years of
yeah.
building up this like strength and
Base.
resistance, and that makes it possible to perform like that in a race like 2011. Like this year
Yeah.
was different. This year, I mean, everybody saw it. We flew together for more than 1,000 kilometers because this was not a very necessary part to be able to have this resistance to go for 10 days, or in 2011 it was 14 days. The race was 14 days for, I think, not even 800 kilometers. And basically we ran the whole thing. I did a lot of gliding, so gliding was good, crazy launches and all this, but I was just able to keep
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
all the time. I was never stopping. I never had problems. I never had blisters. I mean, I had blisters, but I never had blisters like other people had, and I never suffered from these kind of things. So that was why I became third in the Red Bull X-Alps 2011 out of nowhere,
Yeah.
basically, or out
And
of.
were you weren't a Red Bull athlete before the race, right? That's how you got with Red Bull, correct? Because you were third, and everybody went, "What the
Yeah,
hell?
that
Who
was
is this
actually.
guy?"
Yeah, no, I was not a Red Bull athlete. I was good. I mean, I was performing well in all these existing hike and fly races that existed back then. All these border race things where I won the overall class. I won the Red Bull Dolomitimann paragliding category and all this. But that was mostly because I was just strong and I was very
Mhm.
dedicated. Like if I wanted to win something, I went really into the topic. Like for example, the Dolomitimann, I said, okay, why do people win this? Well, they run fast, but they can use any glider they can use. Back then, you could just use any glider. So I was working for not even, I think, half a year at Skywalk, and I said to Arne, the boss of Skywalk, I need to build a glider for Dolomitimann. And he said, yeah, what do you need? I said, I need a 11 square meter poison. That was the E&D. And I think he didn't even realize what I was doing. Anyway, we built this glider. I took it. I went to the race. I think I flew it once before and I won because I was just flying faster than all the other
Right.
guys. And the weight balance. Well, anyway, we're getting off topic, but that was how I got to the Red Bull X-Alps. And then actually, and this is a topic that I'm talking a lot about in my talks also that I give, because it was a really, really first time decisive moment in my career to see what happens if you not follow your own like dream anymore, which was back then was like, I want to be part of the Red Bull X-Alps. I want to take part in this race. This was my absolute dream. And it wasn't like a always conscious dream of like, I have to do this and this now. It just happened because I wanted it. And I got to become a test pilot. I became this and this and this. So things have just aligned in a way that I ended up after 4 years of paragliding in the Red Bull
Wow.
X-Alps. And then what happened was, because I was good, Red Bull came in and my mind said, well, the only thing they could want from me is obviously that I win this race now. But for me, the story was totally different. What I really wanted from my heart was taking part in the Red Bull X-Alps, which I have already done. And that's it. So I was in a total conflict between, wow, what a cool chance to be a Red Bull athlete and getting all these possibilities, but then having the pressure. So the next edition was really tough for me. I came in ninth, I think, in the end in 2013, and I was really struggling all the time. It didn't feel as good as the first. It wasn't that an adventure anymore. It was a really tough time for me, this race. And then I moved on in 2015. I was out of the crisis basically again. But the reason was just that I understood, okay, what everybody was fascinated about was that with the dedication and the goal of you want to go to the X-Alps, then it's possible to do it in only a very short period of time too. Like I could make it in 4 years. And this is actually the story that I'm telling. Is like you can reach a goal in very short time if you really want this and if you really ride on the path. And then it changed and I was not on this path anymore. And then I had to change something again, which was like going to Alaska, doing all these adventures again, doing these things that I love, to come back in 2015, like super relaxed, super strong again, improved flying, confidence and all that.
So it sounds like was the big difference was mental. You were still very fit going into 2013, but there was too much pressure. There was too much. Okay, well, I got third last time. Now I'm Red Bull, all this other stuff, all these opportunities, sponsors. That was just too much pressure to place well, to not have an adventure. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is right. And this is why I'm so dedicated also to sharing a lot more than just the hard fact stories, because it's all the mental part, like all this. This is really interesting for me to understand, when do you perform well and how do you perceive your performance also, because now in this year I was 13th, I think, but I don't care. I had a super cool race. I was super happy with my performance. I didn't ever exhaust myself over the limit. I was just had good flights, and if I'm, second or first, I mean, first is something we don't talk about, right? Because like this place doesn't exist for anybody else than just one person. But everything between second and 15 or last or whatever is cool if you liked it, like you did it.
How have you? That's a really interesting thing. How have you made that change in yourself and embraced it? Because that's quite difficult to do. We all have egos. You've tasted success really more than anybody in the history of the race. You've had 4 third places. You've been on the podium 4 times, which is remarkable. But how do you release that? Next time I got to do better. Next time I got to place better. Next time I need the results. Is it age? Is it just because you've got the maturity now? Is it because you've got your kid? Is it the risk? What is it? What have you been able to do there?
Well, I definitely think, to understand it took a lot of years. So age is definitely a matter here. But just as like there might be young people listening to this, and I can give this advice to people anyway, is it all starts with acceptance. Like you basically, you just accept the fact that you like it in a different way, or you like it the way you like it, and not the pressure from outside. Somebody tells you, well, you're only good. You're only good when you're first. Well, you enjoy doing an adventure there, and not, the goal is not to win only, but still you like in my case, for example, I like the shape of a race, like the what a race gives you. It's a little bit of extra pressure, it's other people and all that. And of course I want to be good, but I'm not the person 100% dedicated and I must win, because otherwise I will not be happy. It's just not like that. And I accept that, and I accept what is there, and then I can start from there. I think this is how everything, also personal development, starts, is with, okay, first of all, okay, this is what it is. I cannot start fighting. That's also how you can describe flow in a good way. It's like a water flows through the river, or also like the air flows around the rock in our sense. Like it will not start fighting with the rock, it will just flow around or something, and that's it. Like it will not go there and say, no, I'm not going to move on
this
because
damn rock.
This rock is like really a damn rock, and so I think I love this comparison, and I think it's an important step. And then from there, you can still decide how your life needs to be happy with your life. I mean, that's in the end more important than struggling all the time because you're not first.
So 2013, and if you want, I mean, typically we've kind of shared a high and a low from each race. And if something stands out from 2011, go for it. And if not, I think you've already kind of described 2011. And mostly it was running. You were super fit. You just went for it and you had a really good race, right? But if you want to go more into it, go for it.
Yeah, I had a good race. I can share one story, which is like the most impressive story, and that also gave me a little bit of more respect even back then, which I liked in that way because well, first of all, we had only one supporter, and back then my girlfriend was my supporter, and that was by itself a crazy story because I remember her, like I'm on the mountain. It was mostly raining. It was basically raining every day, and I remember at one point being up there and waiting just for that little window when the rain calms down a little bit. I mean, we were flying every day in pouring rain. Like that, one story comes to another now, but
Go for it.
so
Love it.
I remember that one moment when I was on this mountain and I call her and she's crying in the van because she cannot do anything and she's just so overwhelmed that she's like, I'm going to sleep now. I cannot stand this anymore. Just do whatever you want. And then I flew down and I remember exactly how that was going and the flight. And then I remember Chrigel saying, yeah, when there's so much water in your glider, a good thing is to, like break the glider. You cannot do that anymore now because the gliders behave differently, but go on the brake so the glider goes backwards. And then with that speed, like all the water comes out in the front. And I remember exactly on that day I did that. I brake the glider and then like a waterfall comes down in front of me before the landing because that makes it safer. The gliders were really different. I mean, and we can jump to 2019. I landed on the first day because of rain in a river, and that was a really, really scary situation. Back then, the gliders were just made in a different way, and they were just flying in the rain, just fine. And now there's another challenge that is also, you can also handle it, but you have to handle it differently. Anyway, that is the one story I can share from 2011, and then the other story which I wanted to start with was we hiked up. We went to Dachstein and then towards the main ridge of the Alps towards Großglockner, which was a turn point, and it was a super föhn day. And I mean, it was my first X-Alps, and I was together with Chrigel. I was first on the second day, and we were hiking almost 100 kilometers on the second day, I think, like really far down Dachstein and then into that valley, or was it 80 or 90?
Wow,
I mean,
day.
it was really far. And we got up on the next morning to this other side of the Alps, and there was the south wind so strong. I have a video of this, and I had it in one of my talks. Maybe you've seen it years ago, I don't know. But it was so strong that I basically not in my wildest dreams I would think about taking off there. And I'm there with Chrigel and I'm just basically hiding from the wind. And he stands there and looks around, and then he like walks away 10 meters with Thomas Dörriat back then. And I see them talking a little bit, and I'm just standing and sitting there with Sarah, my supporter, and we look, and we can't believe that he takes out his glider and takes off. Like, it was like the most incredible thing I've seen. Really. There's only one situation that was that impressive. I thinking of it now, and that was in 2019 when Patrick von Kenel landed in a with this accelerated landing against in a little spot where it was hard to land. That was the same kind of impressive, next level kind of thing back then, because he just implemented that. But back then with Chrigel, that was cool, and I haven't seen him again, of course, on the whole race because he was gone, and he won with, I think back then also with 2 days lead.
Is that the one? Didn't Toma get second? in 2011? Yeah,
Yeah,
because he basically ran the whole
Toma was
way
second. Yeah.
like you did, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was cool because in 2011 it was still of course going to Monaco, the race, and there is this last valley basically leading out to Monaco. It's about 100 kilometers, and I um was with Toma in that valley, and I was in front of him because I flew over him in the evening. I remember that clearly, into this
Is that
valley,
the Isolo,
and
Valley? Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
The Isola Valley, yeah. And yeah, I think it's Isola Valley, yeah. Exactly. And then I start running and suddenly Toma comes and he just vroom, runs past me. And I'm like, Toma, it's still 90 kilometers. He doesn't even turn around. He just runs to goal and he's like 5 hours ahead of me running to
Holy
goal.
shit.
Or not even 5 hours, because next day I flew to almost to the goal. Yeah, I almost flew to the goal. Yeah. I was just missing 9 kilometers and he made it to goal just a couple of hours before. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, what a beast.
Cool to talk about this right now.
It's
I'm getting into all
everyone
these
I've talked
situations.
to has
It's
said
nice.
that. It's neat. It's cool to go back and relive these experiences. You think
Yeah.
they're gone, but they're still up there somewhere. They're in your matter somewhere.
Yeah, I can tell. Maybe that's a good point. I share this also because in 2011, my expectations were I get to Mont Blanc maximum. That's all I can do
Right.
probably. So all my plans, all my preparation, and I've never been to Mont Blanc, never been past Mont Blanc in my life before.
Wow.
So that's how far I planned, and then suddenly I find myself at Mont Blanc in second, third position together with Thomas Coconea. And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do next? And then back then we didn't have these possibilities to, have everything on the phone and just follow each other with just, like you see the track live basically with 2 second delay now or 1 second delay and you just fly with the other guys. But back then what we did is we looked at the live tracking and we took a GPS, and I told Sarah that she should try to redo the track of Chrigel in front of me and put it on my Garmin, which is that big Garmin
Big
thing.
brick.
And then all I did was follow Khrigel's line without knowing where I'm going or whatever. It's just like, okay, that must be the best option. And so, okay, he took off here, right? I called her like, did he take off here? Yeah, he took off here. Okay, I take off. That was crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so now 2013, I didn't know that was such a hard mental year for you. So, but for those listening, to just review it a little bit, it was, you guys had kind of a tailwind. It was incredibly good weather, especially for Chrigel. It started getting worse and worse for those behind him, but until this year, that was the record. I think he finished in 6 days and something hours, way ahead of second place. And then but I remember it was down to the Dockstein, and it was down the Pinzgau up to the Zugspitze. Then I get a little bit more foggy, but the weather was really good, and there was actually an east kind of a light tailwind for the first few days, and a lot of sun. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right. And the problem was really, I mean, in my flying, I wasn't much better than in 2011, honestly. And also my glider was shit. It was really shit. And I didn't feel good with it. And but I made it, I designed it. And I have to be honest that back then also, of course, at Skywalk, there was nobody helping in this direction. It was, like
really new.
2011, my glider was even worse, but it didn't matter that much because the weather wasn't good. So, so in 2013, my glider wasn't good and it was very light, but it didn't fly well. And yeah, like you said, the weather was really good and there were a lot of really good pilots. And obviously that threw me back from the beginning. I remember in Pinzgau, I was washed down in the north wind, in the valley wind, at this one pass there. And so then I was standing on the ground while everybody Chrigel was already flying to Zugspitze. That was more than 100 kilometers further on the on this day, on the second day. So that was really depressing. Thinking of it in the end, that's another learning. Total over planning, like finding security in planning. No room for creativity. This is what happens if you make really, really detailed plans and think that this and this will have to happen like that. There's no room for creativity, and that what happened to me. I knew, okay, I go up here, I glide to there, I go up there, I glide to there, and that's what I did. Exactly, that's what I did. So the cross country was there, flying possibilities was there, but I didn't fly cross country. I just did hike and fly because that's how I planned it. And I was still fast, but of course, much more exhausting and much less, speed.
I can sympathize so much with that, because that's exactly my experience in 2017. In 2015, I had no expectations. I had no idea where I belonged. So I just was going purely for the adventure. I didn't know if I was going to be eliminated or if I could do. I didn't care. I was just in the X-Alps. It was fantastic, and then when it went well, then of course the next year was all the pressure. It was all the, okay, well, if I plan more and strategize more, and I wasn't open to the sky, I wasn't open to the observations.
Yeah. That's of course exactly the point. Like the more freedom you have, and you can rely on your skills, and you can handle every kind of situation, then you'll be able to handle the situation according to what is given for you on that typical day. But if you think, no, today the plan was to do that and that, then you live like in a psychological way, thinking you live in your head and not in the moment. Like you're ahead of yourself, or you're in behind
you're
yourself,
not adapting,
and not
you're not
here.
in flow, you're not doing what you know what to do.
Exactly.
You're fighting against who you are.
Yeah, and by the way, this also happened to me, and just as an example, I chose to do one of the biggest challenges you can do, flying a Piper Super Cub, which is a single-engine small airplane that flies 130 kilometers per hour from Alaska to Patagonia. If you think of that challenge, to plan it, you will have to give up the project, because it's impossible to think of everywhere you will be landing, to plan everything ahead. It's just impossible. So in the end, I came up with just, I think, 4 points that need to be safe. My airplane skills, basically, my personal piloting skills, money, and the goal. And that's it. And then I can handle every situation that will come.
Yeah.
Basically.
Leave it spontaneous.
And maybe Spanish. That was another point.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's how it works.
What was a memorable, really bad, the worst time in the 2013 race? Was there something that stands out that's just, man, that day was brutal?
It was not actually not a day like flying thing. It was that my team, I did it with Sarah again, and we could use a second supporter. That was the first time we were not supposed to only have one supporter, and that was her brother. And at some point she calls me in the race and says, Axel is really sick. He needs to go to the hospital. He has he has a fever, and he can't do anything anymore. And also she doesn't feel well. And they didn't really communicate that with me before. So I just knew when it was really bad already. And so my team was basically, I had the feeling I was not in touch with them. They tried to hide that from me. And so that connection wasn't good anymore. And basically my team fell apart a little bit. Of course, they pulled through, Sarah was really good. She tried to help, but that was also, besides being insecure, also this was a big issue. And I think that was the most memorable worst moment, when suddenly you hear like, okay, well, my team is not there anymore, basically.
Was he able to come back too, or was it just Sarah that was able to continue on?
No, he came back. I think it wasn't that bad. I still don't know exactly what happened there, but what it really was. But just too much pressure, too much everything.
The team thing, well, before we get to 2015, the team thing is really interesting. To me, it's really interesting, especially for those of you who have done it a whole bunch of times, because there seems to be, Aaron took a totally different approach this year. He didn't want pilots on his team. He didn't want anybody with any experience. He wanted to make those decisions and just to shake it up. He's felt like he's been close a bunch of times in the X-Alps, but he's never really been able to have the race that he wants to have. So he wanted to just totally shake it up. But Tom very frequently has just completely changed his whole team and done it with somebody, a whole new group of people. What is what's for those listening who are maybe thinking about doing the X-Alps for the first time, what's the secret sauce there? What are you looking for in your own team after doing it all these times? What works?
Yeah, I think since 2015, I have Werner Stüttl as my main supporter, and this is for me exactly what I'm looking for, and what it is this dedication. We've done it so many times that of course now there gets also a little bit of we're getting older, we have other things to do, maybe feeling to it, but this is like when we start this race, I can 100% know that he wants us or me to move, be able to move as fast as possible through the Alps, and that's our goal. And like he would do everything for that. Like I can't even describe, or I would have to think of a situation where this shows, but like that you just need somebody that you can trust 100%, and that the main point probably is that he can put his own goals and his personal goals aside and just be your supporter, because he thinks that is the most important thing in that time.
That's very cool. And you guys had a bunch of experience together.
And you cannot sorry to say that, but you cannot buy that with money.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Like this is like this amount, maybe it exists, and maybe some athletes will have it at some point, this kind of money, but this is also not what it should be. It should be real dedication. Yeah. And that's, I think, really important.
2015 was my first. 2015 was dominated by very flyable weather, but a lot of wind. We had a ton of accidents that year. A lot of people had to withdraw. Tom, Michael Gebhardt, others. A lot of headwind, a lot of pretty scary headwind. But it was the one you were pretty close to. You had a race at the end with Chrigel that was radical. Very, very exciting. I think you got ahead of him at one point, right? But it was a good year. It was a good year for you. It was very flyable for the most part. We had a lot of sun. We just got a lot of wind. And if you remember, we had 3 days in the beginning that were crazy hot. Remember the unbelievable heat of the prologue?
The hottest days
and
ever.
I pulled my first. You and I were both in the top 3 in the prologue, so we had 2 night passes, and I made the massive mistake of using my first one. I think it was day 3 going into Lermoos, and about 10 o'clock at night, it unleashed a storm. I've never seen rain that heavy. I was walking to Lermoos on the pavement in a river. It was about 10 inches deep. I thought, this isn't a good time to use my night pass. This is horrible. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting year. What's something you remember, maybe a high and a low from the 2015 race?
Well, the 2015 race was definitely my race. Like this was my Red Bull X-Alps. If I could choose any of these Red Bull X-Alps that I want to do again, and how it felt to me and how it went, this was the race. The perfect team set up, first time with Werner, and the dedication that I described before, the friendship that evolved out of that. And then also the glider I had, it was the best glider, I think, performance wise. We were just that little bit ahead of everybody else with that technology change at Skywalk, and it was still a three-liner, but it could have been a two-liner. We just didn't dare to make it a two-liner back then already, and it was just the perfect race for me, the perfect flow. You know, I remember flying, for example, towards Locarno, but on the one valley to the north. I don't remember the name of the pass right now there, but you know, Chrigel just ahead of us, ahead of me, maybe an hour or 2 hours ahead, and super strong wind, and still, you know, I could just take off and keep up with him. He was not getting away, you know. And that was just cool. And I mean, now we all get closer to that. This year's race, and he had the same kind of difficulties he had back then with me, I think, and with these difficult weather conditions, that was just right for me. I could just handle it in that year.
And a low point, you got to tell about your flight down through Grenoble and all that stuff. That was pretty amazing. But that was the year, right? I mean, you kind of by the live tracking, you got ahead of him, didn't you? At the end.
I wasn't. I think I was. Well, I was ahead, but
way off route.
Now the stories come up again here. Yeah, now good. That took a little bit. I was just now in the overall flow situation of how it went, but of course there was definitely this low point, and maybe that made it that exciting for me and that memorable too, because getting to Grenoble, getting to Annecy, which was a turn point, I cut the corner like I did, I think, in 2013 already, or in 2011. Well, that was in 15. So, or maybe no, that was the first time. I did it another time, I think, later on. But back then, I cut the corner basically around. I went to the south of after Matterhorn, which nobody did before, and then went over the small St. Bernhard Pass, I think, and then came from the backside of Mont Blanc, around Mont Blanc. And that was something that nobody has done before. And it actually works just amazing, because the thought is, you know, in the morning you have this outflow of the valley, and I took off on this pass and I glide just forever in the right direction. And it basically is like a present, you know. You cut the corner and then you get this present in the morning of flying 20 kilometers in half an hour towards like where you want to go, and you seem to be in the totally wrong spot at the wrong time, but this just like that changes everything if you do a move like that. And anyway, that made it possible that I could fly inside the mountains earlier than Chrigel could outside, because he chose a line outside, and so he couldn't take off that early, and I was already flying for 2 hours, and then he had to leave Annecy because otherwise I would have caught up with him, and he just managed by an hour or something to fly away before I came there and took off again. And what he did then, he flew into the high mountains. Actually, he changed the system again, because first I was in the high mountains, and he was and he was in the lower mountains, and then he flew into the high mountains. I thought, well, I mean, there is this perfect line, and I was actually influenced by Clément Latour from 2013, who did this line. He's a local there, and he flew outside. He came second in 2013, and he flew on one of those good days. He flew very much on the outside, like around
down through Saint Hilaire and west,
exactly,
west.
and on there, and so in 2015, I thought, well, I remember this line, and and I saw Chrigel going in there. Well, perfect. I just go there, and I will have a chance to fight with him. Because on the same line, I thought, well, I will not be able to catch him, you know, which in hindsight, that was the mistake, you know, because is hindsight the right word? I
Looking
mean,
back.
this is just okay. Looking back, yeah. So what I did, I flew in those mountains, and it was working really, really well. And as you said, I was even like looking just on the tracks. I even caught up with him, and I was in front. And then suddenly, like everything switched, and the wind got super, super strong, and I was scared to death, being blown around like a leaf in the flatlands, having basically no way of trying of even sticking to my path. I was just like blown out into the flatlands, and I was really like, okay, I just want to land and not die. It got really bad, and the next day, also, I remember that really well because I did a lot of talks, and there's this this situation of with this one clip in there, and like the leaves are just flying, and the wind is blowing, and I had no chance to fly anymore out there. I was just outside, and so on that day before when this happened, I was obviously in the second position or fighting for the first one, and then on that one day I was basically stuck. And this we had an advantage of one day I was in front, or Chrigel and I were in front one day, a full day in front of the German guy. I forgot his name, who came second then. And then all the other group of Aaron and
Antoine and Gaspard.
Antoine and Gaspar, exactly. So obviously these other guys were flying in the mountains, and they were catching up really quick. Like on that one day, I went from having a chance to win, a little bit of a chance maybe. I mean, it's Chrigel, right? We know that, but there was a little bit of a chance to I'm sixth now, and there was more than a day of a gap between. So we were fighting. We were basically making one day of being ahead, and then losing it within one day. So I was basically like on the position. I mean, I moved forward, but anyway, so I was fighting really hard to get to a good point, and actually, being on a mountain next to all these other guys, just so Chrigel and one more guy were in goal. So, but place 3, 4, 5, 6 were still possible. And although I was taking a night pass, and I was walking like really all night to get to this takeoff in the morning at like 9, I wanted to be there. And I never slept more than, I think we did a rhythm of like 15 to 20 minutes, and then hike again till 10 kilometers, and then 15 to 20 minutes. And we pulled it off. And the next day, I remember taking off and being able to just deliver my flight. And this is why maybe this X-Alps was so memorable for me, because even after all this, I didn't get distracted from these other guys. I just flew down to like 3 or 4 kilometers before goal, and in like I think 10 or 15 kilometers before goal, you get out into the sea breeze there. And I remember Aaron being next to me, and just he sees the goal, and he's like, okay, now the final glide starts, and he's like, and he just lands there. That was really funny. I have to talk about that with him at some point. But he just lands, and then obviously he starts running. And if you want to do it flying wise, you really have to fly patiently. You have to find your way through that headwind. And I did all that. And just a few kilometers before goal, I remember that my supporters told me, Aaron is running like crazy, but you can't measure this because the roads go like really windy. So he actually had still 4 hours of work ahead of him, but it looked like he caught me now. And so they called me, and then they kind of made me a little bit crazy. So I took a wrong decision in the end, and I landed in a thorn bush, like really long thorns. And I had one in my leg, we pulled it out
Stuff's so
afterwards, and
nasty
my
down
glider
there.
was stuck in this. And I even have a helicopter video of this, because it was obviously just 2 or 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers air distance from the goal. But anyway, I had to pull this glider out, and I could have flown the goal for sure if I just take more time. But anyway, they go totally crazy and say, yeah, now you have to run and you have to run. And my backpack, that was also the year when a week before the race, I saw my own backpack, super lightweight. Like it was just like paper thin, like the 27-gram material I took and it was just falling apart. So we basically put
Just
a
wrapped it with duct
piece
tape.
of rope around wrap around the rope so I can have it on my back. First I was just carrying like that, but in my hand, but then we figured out, because of all these turns, it's still 7 or 8 kilometers to go and not just 3 like on the direct line. So we started, okay, we need to back this up, and the backpack all broken apart. And anyway, I'm running like crazy to goal and make 3rd place, although all these competition just came up in the last day because of that one mistake of getting into the exposure of this crazy wind.
Wow, crazy. Down and up at the same time. I mean, I remember that I don't think people appreciate those roads down there. I remember I had tried so hard to get ahead of Ferdy, because I thought I really was ahead of Ferdy the day before, and I got caught in this crazy wind. I think you and I talked about it in Monaco the night I got in, and I was really as close that I've ever come to dying paragliding. I really thought I was going to die. And
Okay.
so when I landed, crashed more or less, holy cow, I'm okay. I thought we had really bad cell. This was back in Vars, and I thought that Ferdy and Nick were so far behind. And the last report I'd gotten was that they were both on the ground. So, okay, I can rest. I'll launch again when the wind backs off, and everything will be fine. Well, he flew over my head, and I was so angry about it that I was just convinced I could get him. And the Asolo Valley you're talking about, I landed at 8:59. I had this amazing flight, but I was still 19K behind him. And in my mind, I thought, I'll run, I'll get him, I'll get him. And of course I didn't. But the next day, we learned about this little launch that was just across from Pei, one of those ridges that's facing south towards the Med. And I flew, and it was terrible. I was so exhausted, I couldn't make it work, and I just bombed out. And when I bombed out, it was, on the live tracking, I was 3K away from Pei, but the walk was 14K and 3,000 feet of
Yeah.
gain. And I just started crying. I thought, it's not possible. It's right there. I can see the fucking thing. It's not possible. It's
Yeah.
so,
And it's super
it's
hot,
100
and it's 40
degrees
degrees
and the
Celsius,
roads like
and
this. It was just, no, it's not
yeah,
possible.
no, this area is a struggle, but it was like really. Now, how it is right now, the race is also fine, but this was a special thing, going to Monaco and having this final challenge of all these bushes where you cannot land, where you cannot take off, where it's super hot, where the roads are
Terrible.
like you said, like 10 kilometers for a 2 kilometer distance, straight line distance and stuff like that. It was a really cool part of this
Yeah, it was
race.
tough. I mean, it was always fascinating looking at the track logs of how Chrigel would do that swim upstream thing down there. It was, just consistently he'd fly in there. That's a rough go. I had this.
Yeah, in 2011, that was, I mean, in 2009 he was the first one to really fly to goal. That was something people were talking about that afterwards, like how did he do it? It's impossible. Everybody thought it's impossible to fly against the sea breeze to
Yeah,
the sea. It's
yeah.
not possible. And then he tried to explain that, we talked about it, and he said, yeah, well, you're basically just finding that line where it's lee side, but it's possible because of the thermals, and that's the line you have to take. And he just figured it out, like he just didn't expose himself to the wind, to the headwind. He just flew where it's just lift and not headwind. and this is what we learned over the years. Like the flying has improved in that way
Yeah.
a lot. Like things like that, the imagination we have, or at least that's how I see it, has changed from, okay, there's a headwind, it's not possible, to, okay, which way can I go to make it possible? Where is it possible? And it is possible. There's always a way.
Yeah.
We just have to figure it out. And this will develop more. We'll get better in this kind of way of flying. It shows also, of course, in further flights, but it's also a different way of flying. This kind of cross country flying in areas that you don't know, with winds that you cannot see. It's just like it's a development, like towards becoming more like a bird, but of course being really far away from it. But still, and this is what Chrigel did 10 years ago already. So of course he's ahead. He's still ahead. But he understood back then what we understand now.
Yeah, and this is a good segue to 2017, because I remember he that was his whole principle there. I learned in 2015 at the media event, sitting next to him at the hangar, that he didn't scout. And I thought that was because I'd been there for a month and a half scouting, and I said, "Wow, really? You don't scout?" He said, "No, because the race is different when we start in a week than it was back in May. It's not the same. The conditions aren't the same. And I don't want to have any preconceived notions about what works versus what doesn't." And in 2017, he didn't scout. He never does. But he asked a lot of the athletes who had scouted about the Garda turn point. How do we get to the Garda turn point? And everybody told him it's impossible. You can't do it. There's too much wind coming off the flats from Venice. It's always south. We're going dead south. It can't be done. And then of course he did it, because he just didn't want to.
Yeah, because it's actually what we said before. It's exactly what we said before, now described in Krigel's words. You don't want to be, you want to be free in your head for all the possibilities, and being able to perceive the moment and not saying, it's not possible anyway. And your head keeps telling you it's not possible. And then you're not even able to see what the chances that are there. That is all. That is it. And if we learn more and more about that, then we can, like, the best example for me is like you, for example, checking the weather. I check the weather in the morning to take a decision. Do I go up the mountain or not? But once I'm up the mountain and once I'm flying, really, I mean, of course, some weather changes might be interesting to know, but in general, I don't need to check the weather anymore, because I see everything. I see any change. I see clouds developing. I see if I know that there is, if my supporter tells me, okay, the weather says there is going to be a thunderstorm at this and this time and this location, my whole thing will change to the negative for sure, because I will be always in my head, there will be a thunderstorm. This is dangerous. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Stop, 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 stop. But if I'm just flying there and I see a big cloud developing, I can still take the decision, well, this cloud is too big for me. And then I land, or I feel a headwind, or even a gust front. Even with that, you feel it. It's gonna be there, and you will be able to feel it, and then you can do something in that moment. And that's, of course, super fast changes. I don't say everybody should do that, because you need to be able to react really fast and take the right decision really quickly. That is a matter of experience, but being always preconceived, I think that's the right word, with everything, and being, this could happen and this could happen, is basically fear. Then it's fear-based, and fear, what is fear? Fear is always just a thought. So you're thinking of it, and then that's not a positive way of thinking out of fear.
2017, just to review, so people, it was much different weather than 2015, especially early. There was a lot of thunderstorms, a lot of cloud, I can't remember if the firn was really bad that year. I don't remember, but I remember a lot of thunderstorms. Only 2 people made it in, although you were basically on the beach. You had another really good race in third. This was the first time we really saw Benoit's incredibly fast ability on the ground, and we had that crazy blow out of the mountains that Chrigel had. You know, he was going 100 and something kilometers an hour, getting blown out into the flats, the Italian flats. So the end was brutal, especially for those in the lead, which was interesting for those in the back. It was kind of one of the first times where you could, you know, the weather in some sense was worse for you guys out front once you got to the Matterhorn, because it was so windy, and it was pretty tough flying those last couple days. But do you have a recollection of a great memory and a good day, a bad day kind of thing?
It's good. It's good that you just summed up the whole race a little bit, because you said 2017. What happened? I was like, what? I don't know. I don't
Oh,
know.
wasn't
I have
2017
no
the
idea.
day you
But
took the Southern Lakes route? That's where you crushed it, right? That was
yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
That
Yeah,
was awesome.
that was a lot of good things in 2017. But let's start with the bad, or not with the bad, with the learning process. I chose to go, because I know that I'm not a very structured person. I like to be, I call it in my flow, and being able to, just navigate my life and everything like I want it. But I thought I need somebody in my team who gets a lot of structure in there. And so I put that, I had that person with me, and that made that that made a good learning, again, for, you cannot plan, like you said before, you cannot
Mm.
plan everything. That's what he did, and that was another step towards, I need even more freedom,
Ah,
I
okay.
need even more freedom in my
Mm.
races. But that's just one point. On the other hand, I managed a good compromise in planning and still being able and free to decide on a point. So it was a very intense learning race, a changing kind of race. So 15 was kind of my race, surprisingly well. Back from 13, where there was the low point, finding the freedom again by, going my way, which was actually going to Alaska and flying an airplane and going in full adventure mode, and then having a good race in 2015, and in 2017. Yeah, the field became really strong. Lots of young guys. Simon Oberrauner was there for the first time, for example, and really strong flying and a good back and forth for me in the race. And then we came down to where also a decisive part of the race this year was happening. That's Lake Como and Lago Maggiore, or Lago di Como, Lago Maggiore. Very big races, big lakes. Sorry. And I decided on a non-thermal day to go straight over the lakes, basically, which allowed me to do hike and fly. Hike up, fly over the lake, hike up, fly over the lake, and like that, I came from a position, I think, like somewhere in the top 10 to the third position, I think, if I remember that right. Um, and and that was cool, because the other guys were in a valley, Sondrio Valley, where you can just run. Because just as a little calculation thing, like you can run up 1,000 meters and glide 10 kilometers in the same time, basically, that you can
Run.
run 10
Yeah.
kilometers in the
Yeah.
flat. So there's no point in a straight valley with just mountains on the side to hike up a mountain and then fly. I mean, you can do it for fun, but it will not give you an advantage, except if you get a little bit of a thermal or something. And so that the point is, you always need a mountain in front of you that you can go up straight in the direction you want to go to, and then fly down in the direction you want to fly to. Then it's an advantage again. And I chose that line that was like that, so I could always hike up a mountain in the direction I wanted to go, and then fly. That's how I got a little bit of an advantage again. So that was cool. I have a nice video on my nice vlog of the X-Alps on my YouTube channel. I think it's called Lake Hopping. If you want to look for it on YouTube on my channel, and that is
You had a great
that is
vlog.
good.
You did a vlog every day of that
Mhm.
race, and they're amazing. I saw your talk here when you were in Sun Valley, and you showed a lot of that. It was just beautiful. But did that lakes move? Was that something that just occurred to you on the spot, or was that something you had in your back pocket thinking beforehand?
Yeah, that's what I had in my
Okay.
back pocket. This is what I wanted to say. So it was a good mixture between having those plans in my back pocket and knowing, okay, if the chance is there, I will be able to do it. And that's what happened there. And compared to, like I said, 2013, when I only had these plans and I wasn't able to say, okay, today is a different day. I don't need the
Gotcha.
plan. I just go
Yeah.
like it comes. And then two more interesting stories there. I think in 2017 was when we came towards the Matterhorn turn point from the south. Um, yeah, that was interesting because there was a lot of north wind. I remember that, and like you said, the wind was getting really strong. And I remember for the first time being able to do what we do now, like I described it before. The first time being on the most inside part of the Matterhorn Valley of the from the
Hmm.
south. What's it called? Not
Starts
Zermatt,
with a
but the other
C.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Serviglia or
I'm
something like
so
that.
bad with names.
Corvalli. Yeah. I know, yeah. South side of the Matterhorn.
Yeah, it will come. It will come anyway. I'm all the way tucked into the big mountains there, coming from the east, and the turn point was put in a way so it was a little bit in the middle of the valley. And so my plan was to go to the turn point and then just fly out. And it wasn't possible. I would have landed if I go just straight to the turn point. So what I did, and that was really the experience and the development of my own flying style. I went there and I crossed to the other side of the valley, all the way away from where I wanted to go. I wanted to go basically south, but I had to go northwest to be able to be in the lee side, to find a thermal there and fly out the valley in the thermal line. And this was a really, like for me personally, a changing point. As I said, Chrigel did this in 2011 already and in 2009. And also, yeah, that was why he's so good. He's that one step ahead. But I remember really clearly that day when I took that decision. Okay, now I need to go with the flow of the air. The flow of the air goes that direction. I take that and then I fly out and I make it to the point I want to go to, but in a total like
Roundabout way.
going
Yeah.
around, like 20 kilometers more, but still going there. And so that was really amazing, and I remember that moment really well. Although maybe it was not for the outside viewer or for anybody, it was probably not that special, but
Mm.
for me it got really it stuck with me. And then of course comes this flat part where the fastest line was just 100-kilometer run. And I remember exactly, it was the same day of the story that I just told you. I land in the flat after a good day, and really land like also like 5 minutes to 9, like perfect timing, perfect glide, 20-kilometer evening glide out into the flat. And I land, and then my supporter comes and says, well, now it's 100 kilometer to your next takeoff. Okay, good. So I thought I'm going to sleep now, and then no, it's 100 kilometer to your next takeoff. And so yeah, we make a plan, night pass. Everybody takes the night pass, and we run. Like what I always do is like make a plan, like 10 kilometers of running, 10 to 20 minutes of break, and that goes on and on and on, and that's how you get through, and then you will be there. And that's
No
also an
magic.
interesting story, and it's a little bit secret story. But anyway, we get up to that one pass, like leading again over the mountain, because we go across, and then we have to go over the Alps again one more time to go to Monaco, basically. And there's a long pass leading up there, and Chrigel took the same way, and also Benoit was already there that day in the morning, so he already flew to goal. and I was in third position, and I was really, really tired. And back then we started trying, different things. For example, Ayurvedic stuff, so food changed, like, and some oils, every day I get some Ayurvedic oils on my body, and so calm down. And for me, it worked really well. So I had really good experience with that. But there was this, this girl with me besides, my girlfriend back then, and as a supporter, and they took care of this kind of stuff. And she was like, yeah, let's try this. Maybe this makes it better. We put some of this oil in Paul's ears. And so she puts the
Whoa.
oil in my ear. And I get totally like, I was. It's a strange story. I've never told this story to anybody. But so I hike after like being already totally in a delirium. The delirium gets really, really bad. And I'm just like, hiking. I don't see anything anymore. And I'm like, totally bad. And then just we were planning to still make an evening flight from the pass towards Monaco and then run again over the night. So I hike up the pass, and it gets really late, and we're like, okay, I will not be up there before 5 or 6 in the evening. So, well, motivation is really low. And I remember I go and I stop, and I want to pee, and I pee, and then boom, total clearness, like the clearest vision of the world again. I'm totally there. It was, I don't know, such a weird experience. But I still don't know what kind of oil it was. It was like some Ayurvedic oil with some
mushroom oil.
Mushroom oil. I don't know. I don't even know what that was. I have to figure it out. But that was impressive. And then I was totally fit, and I run up the last 1,000 meters to the takeoff and take off, and I start soaring around, and I'm like, okay, it's not gonna work. Like I'm flying against the valley breeze. I'm gonna land straight on the bottom of the pass, and I see my supporters driving away down the pass on the side of Monaco, and I'm like, well, it's not gonna work anyway. I top land, and I instantly fall asleep on top of that pass. And they're like, what is happening? Where is he? So they come back, and then it was like 7 or something. I get into the van, fall asleep right away. Like they take me in the van. I eat something, and I sleep until 5 in the morning when we can start hiking again. And this guy I took with me, I started before talking about him. He was very structured, and he had this plan ready. And if we had only time till 11 a.m., that the limit was 11 a.m., then the race was cut off. So there was another 100 kilometers to go, and basically I had time till 11 or 80 kilometers to go or something. And he made a perfect plan. You have to run from 5 a.m. to this point, then you glide down, you run again. I think the plan was involving 4,000 vertical meters, and I don't know, X kilometers of running. And I say, you know what?
Doesn't mean that much.
I don't want to say the F word.
Yeah, fuck it.
F you. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my own thing. And then something really cool, really, really cool happened, because I start hiking at 6, taking it easy, looking at at Google Earth, and I found this mountain with a slope facing north, because it was very strong north wind. Of course, in the morning, outflow of the mountains, and then a north föhn situation implemented itself. So I'm on this place, and at 7:30 or something, or 7:38, I take off and I soar, and I basically soar and soar and soar, and I keep soaring towards Monaco in the morning at 7:30. Wow. And by 10, the thermals start kicking in, and everything turns around, and I get it midair from soaring, switching to the south sides, taking the thermals, and at 11, when the cutoff is there, they tell me, okay, my supporters told me, okay, because of some festival in Monaco, there's an airspace, and some kind of launch is closed or something like that was going on. And I'm like, guys, F that. I'm just gonna land on the beach, and I made it to the sea. The slogan of the Red Bull X-Alps is Glacier to Sea. And for me, this was the perfect experience.
Amazing.
Like I flew almost 100 kilometers from 7 in the morning till 11 and
my
land on the
God,
beach.
what
It
an
was
ending.
for sure one of the most impressive flights of my life. And I think like this is what is possible. This
That's
is what is
amazing.
possible. You can go and use that flow of air that changes all the time, and you can be there and just use whatever is there and make it till 11 from the highest points of the mountains to the sea.
Wow.
Super cool. Of course, the rewards were like, he didn't make it, we didn't fight enough, whatever. I landed on the beach. I was
Yeah,
happy.
that's an awesome ending. Fantastic. Okay,
Yeah,
2019. This
thinking of it now, really cool. Thanks for reminding me of this.
that was
Haven't thought
that
about
was
that
very
for a
cool. That
while.
was not the ending I had. I ran a marathon the night before and the next morning just to stay ahead to get 13th or something. Just what am I doing? This is so stupid. But so the 2019 was an interesting year. It was in all my X-Alps experience, there was no radical weather. I know that I heard a story from Eduardo that he was in a pretty bad gust front, and there's always some bad weather, but I don't remember ever walking up anything and not being able to just instantly launch. In some ways the race was defined by the crazy stability and heat of the last few days, where tons of people top landed Mont Blanc. I think Toma got to 6,000 something meters around Monteviso, which was one of the turn points. So it was a pretty interesting race, and the last one that went to Monaco.
Yeah, I remember that really well, that day when the high cloud base was there. Things developed, the sport developed. Patrick von Kenel was also there. Young people that fly really, really well, that have different style, suddenly appear, and they're there. We are all there together around Mount Viso, a group of 6, or I don't know number, but a lot of people flying after all these days very close to Monaco together. And the day before, I remember I had a really, really good but very tough flight against very, very strong south wind out of Briançon, I think to Briançon there from the pass out. Like I remember I think I've since then never been fighting that much against wind, flying against wind. That was my most impressive flight against wind for myself, like always pushing full speed bar, getting around the corner, soaring up, pushing again. Very impressive, very cool for myself, like my personal feeling. And that put me, I think, in the third position again or something. So I felt quite comfortable of having pushed that way. And we get to Mont Viso turn point, and I remember going up to that pass, and then the radius was just there. So I think, okay, I'm just gonna soar up, fly to the radius, and come back. But what I didn't understand, or just I didn't have in my overview of things, was that by flying over this pass to the other side into the radius, I was overflying or changing the side of the Alps. Like I was basically going from the north side of the main ridge, or the west side of the main ridge of the Alps, to the east side of the main ridge of the Alps. And this always involves a change. Like every time there is different air mass on the one side, on the other side, there's always different kind of flying situation. And so when I was back down, I was down there suddenly, and the other guys, they went one valley more to the east or north, but they stayed on the west side of the main ridge of the Alps and tagged the turn point from there, all flying. So I messed up again, which is kind of a standard in my, I don't know what, like I like it that way, or I said before, acceptance is the first point to be happy, I think. So I have to accept that this is the rhythm I take. And so I'm in the leading position, and suddenly everybody flies past me again. And I have to walk midday over the pass, basically back to the other side of the Alps. And the other guys up at 4,500 500 meters or something flying above me, but I didn't really understand that it's that kind of a day. It was still not, I couldn't still figure it out because on the ground it was super strong, super windy, and I needed to find a takeoff. And I took off, and I was flying out a little narrow valley, and there was no way to make it out. And suddenly I look up and I see these little dots above me flying over me, and I'm like, fuck, this is not like, I thought it's unflyable that day. It was super strong wind in the valleys. And I say, okay, I have to get into the air. So I hike up on the really like the most sun exposed side on the valley side. And I say, okay, there's only one goal right now, is to make altitude, to get up as high as possible. And I start turning, and it goes up and up and up. And I'm at 4,000 meters, and I'm like, okay, we have these skywalk harnesses have this air protection, and because of the less pressure, outside pressure, this thing blows itself up. And I'm like sitting in there with my back like that. And like, okay, I must be really high. I get really scared because I think this thing is going to explode, and super crazy situation. And I remember, so like somewhere around 4,500 meters, I say, okay, it's enough. Like there's no point in going higher. And like you said, Toma that day, he went super high. Is what I heard. And I said, it's enough. It doesn't help anymore because there was a lot of wind also at this altitude. So the balance between, okay, I get blown in the wrong direction and then have to make it against the wind anyway. So anyway, I said, okay, well, I go and I catch up with these guys again. And in the evening, actually, I land with Patrick von Kenel. He's already there, and all these guys are just around me, and it's really cool. And we get to basically again the last turn point, which was one of those mountains on the outside there,
south of
like
Barceloneta. I forget what that term, white mountain. Yeah, south of Barceloneta. White.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Blanc, Cheval Blanc.
Yeah,
Cheval Blanc. And so in the evening, I did a really, really strong push up that mountain, and I fly down on the other side. No idea where all the other guys are. And I land right next to Benoit on the road. Like, oh, cool. What are you doing here? And so from that moment on, we're together, and we're like, okay, well, let's see what happens, the next day. Let's try to make it to Monaco. And we hike in the morning, and, everybody looks at each other. What is he planning? What are we actually racing here? Are we doing this together? And it's like, and are we sharing our ideas or not? And anyway, we take off, and he knows that area really well. He's from this location there. And he knows every mountain. He has a really good plan. And I say, well, I try to follow you. And of course he pushes. And I had a problem with my glider. I had a cut in my glider. So whenever I used the accelerator, it wasn't flying well anymore. I lost like 1 or 2 glide points. Not points, but like total numbers. I was really just like going down, so I couldn't keep up with him. So we had to fix that. I figured it out. Sometimes we put some tape on it with my supporters on the way. And so anyway, we raced together, and we did a couple of hike and flies because, as you said, it was stable. And then we made it on a cliff launch, really, really cliff launch. We took off. I remember that really well, and everybody thought we were crazy, but we made it out, and we flew thermal wise really, really well. I think to almost 30 kilometers. That's my memory now, but I have no idea about the correct numbers towards the goal. And it's second of it's about the third place. We're fighting for the third place. I think who was second.
I remember who was second. I knew you were going to ask me that.
But anyway, let's keep on with the story. So we were actually fighting for third place, and I see him because he knows. It's always like we come back to the same point here. You know something, and you think it has to be like that again. And I see him landing there in front of me on a big flat plateau, and he lands, and I come behind him, and I understand I could go up in thermals higher and fly just over him, and I see him in front of me landing, and I'm like, well, why is he landing? He must have a reason to land. So I land with him. because I didn't know where I am. I have no idea what's the best ways, and he must know some secret, or maybe I didn't see an airspace or whatever. So I land with him, and we run, and at some point we look at each other and say, well, this is stupid. We basically, after I don't know how many days, we're trying to race each other on this, and let's just try to get to goal and not be caught up by the other guys from behind, because they were pushing also. They were really coming close. As I said before, the day before, we were all together in the evening. But and then we said, okay, let's do this together. And from there on, we were really, he was showing me the takeoffs. We were gliding together. We were doing crazy things together, really, and pushing really hard. And we decide on the way to the goal, even if the organizers will try to make this different, we're gonna go basically arm in arm and sign with at the same time, so that they cannot say anything, and we will share the third place. And that's what we did. And that was one of the best sporting experiences for me, for sure, because there was just this freedom of like leaving behind the stress of the race and just doing this adventure together.
Yeah, that was a very
was really cool.
memorable
Really cool.
point in the history of the race, was the sportsmanship and the look on your guys' faces. You're both sunburned, and I just looked that was a great way to end. It was a beautiful moment in sport, not just the X-Alps, just in sport in general. Okay, geez, you've done a lot of these. 21, that was my last one, and the 21 was, let's see, I can't even remember it now. 21 was fiercely bad weather in a lot of places, a ton of firn, a lot of very stormy conditions, a lot of reports of several accidents, but also a lot of reports of just hairy flying. I know that I myself had some flights that were really very borderline. But and then once again, I think this was the first year that Chrigel really had a run for his money. At least up through day 7, where that kind of top 10 was really moving around a ton. And then Chrigel did just an unreal magic move at the end. Took a very different line and left everybody in the dust. But you had another very cool experience. I remember your video at one point. One of my funnest videos I've seen in the X-Alps was you, and you're doing this, to the camera talk. I think you're up somewhere around the backside of Mont Blanc, and you say, yeah, so the weather this way looks pretty good, but unfortunately, and you turn it around, unfortunately, I got to go that way, and it looks really bad. That was a great video.
Yeah, it's cool that you remember that, because that was kind of a not a good situation, because I was up at 3,000 meters and it was 9 p.m. and so it involved some, like, not a very good trail. And anyway, but that was just of course an exciting moment. But I think the really, really, really big thing about the 2021 X-Alps for me was that I broke my foot in March, I think, or April, May, June. Yeah, I think just like the minimum amount of time before the race that even just the bone could heal, in theory, according to the doctors. And so I was in a really good training period. I was pushing really hard, and I wanted to, because of that, because I wanted to do everything right. I was working also with a coach, and he said, well, yeah, I remember I called him that day, and I said, well, it's already late and I'm tired. But he said, yeah, well, if you could still do a little bit of that, of training, that would be good. Just hike up that. And it was fresh snow, and I hike up my classic ski tour, and I ski down, and it was totally foggy, and I didn't see a cliff, and I fell over the cliff and land on my foot without knowing where the ground will be. So I was just free falling, and it broke. And it broke my carbon ski boot in 2 pieces. Like, it was really big impact. And that was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to take part in this race. Really down, but a lot of good preparation, good physiotherapy, and I think, I don't know, 1 week or 2 week before the race, we decide, okay, let's do it. Could be that after one day we'll be out of the race, or after 2 days, and that would be okay. And we're just gonna do this in the way that is possible. And it was the first time that I did this race basically without physical preparation. I was not physically prepared. I could not do anything. Like for 8 weeks before the race, I was not able to do anything. Just a week before the race, I took my backpack and I hiked up like 500 meters and flew down.
Okay, done.
And we get to the race, and the of course the strategy was to fly, like really fly, like whenever it's possible, fly and just hike upwards, because that's what I can do well, usually, just from experience. And then surprisingly, the race was really good, but I never had the possibility to push really like I could before. Whenever there was like a flat day, I was not like I did before. Now you have to push those 30K and you just run it. Like this year, for example, with Tim, we just run 30K like that. Back then I was like, okay, well, I have no idea if my body breaks apart or not, so I'm not gonna run. I'm just gonna hike 10K easy, and then see from there. And so this was what happened. So this was why I was also not in the first group, but I could still keep up with the guys, more or less. And then at Mont Blanc was very decisive, because I remember getting to the Mont Blanc northwest side, just an hour behind Simon Oberrauner, and he got a thermal there and flew basically straight over Mont Blanc that day. And in the morning of that day, we had a 50K, 40K distance difference. Then it was just an hour. Was it 30K? Then it was just that hour, but this hour led to him being, in the end, in goal, or almost 300 kilometers ahead, because that was the first time we changed also the route, and route change meant weather in the Alps always comes, or weather generally comes from the west. So first you move through the weather going from the east to the west, so weather passes fast, but then you move with the weather from the west to the east. So these guys that made it over Mont Blanc in the front, they were in the good weather, and everybody else was in the bad weather, and that didn't change basically, because we were all basically moving with the weather. And so that was really the first time that was so obvious what this change in the route meant. It meant this, that you had to be in the good weather on the way back, or you're in the bad weather. And Chrigel made the best out of this, of course. Like, he understood that before. Everybody else always needs to learn from experience, I think. And so we like Aaron and I and Toby, we were really fighting. Like from Mont Blanc back was a really, really, really tough race, with a lot of wind, with a lot of experiences that were on the edge, but yeah, also interesting. And in the end, although I had this broken leg, I think I came seventh in the end. So for me, total success.
You had that great race the last day, right up until 11 o'clock. I was watching you. Was it Manuel? You're racing Manuel, right?
Yeah, Manuel Nübel.
He went on foot all night, and you guys were just in very kind of different positions, and it was a cool race. You almost got him. That looked like a lot of fun. So 23 was, this is really fresh on everybody's mind. The movie just came out, I think, yesterday. So I'd love to hear something that maybe people don't know about that happened to you or your team, or just something that's still fresh, obviously, but maybe, because we all just watched it. We were, I was there. I get to experience it with you guys, which was really fun. But, you other than the obvious stuff, you had the the mistake going into Wagrain. And so you were a little off the back, but then you did some great catching up. And then, it was yet another good race. I mean, and like you said, you were really happy with it at the end, but anything just kind of outside the box that people don't know about?
Just my general impression of the race was it was overwhelmingly good from
Yeah.
flying. Like for me, it was too much. Like coming from where we started in the beginning from 2011, where it was not a pilot, I would say. The development was there. Obviously, I could keep up with all these pro pilots that live that grew up with a glider now. Basically, that's who is playing in the front there. That is good for me. I could do it. I could fly with them. That was really cool. So for me personally, to see this development, I'm happy about. But for me, it was just like I want a day of flying like that, and then a day of having to push on the ground, taking good strategic decisions, being more like in also the footwork adventure, basically
I would
mode.
imagine it must have been. What I'm hearing from you is it was frantic. I mean, just in my role, just trying to keep up with you guys, it was frantic. It was just frantic for 7 days. What the mark it made on me was that the day after Chrigel got in, when 17 of you got in in the same day. That's crazy. That's just unbelievable to race 1200K, which is really 2000K, and everybody gets in the same day. That just was.
I mean, I was 6 hours behind the second one, I think,
Exactly.
or 7 hours or something. After all this time, so the performance. This is where
that's not possible. No one could predict that could ever happen. It just doesn't. It just kind of defied all the. Here's how this race works. Well, not this year.
Yeah. So I was coming in 13th, and I was still just 6 or 7 hours, I don't know exactly, but behind the second one. So that the group, the field was incredibly strong. Always like strong. I mean, we were always kind of like matching each other. But that made a difference, of course. You had to push all the time like crazy to be able to do that. But on that very last day, I think it was between 9 or 8 and 13, we were one group together in the morning.
Yeah.
Like it was Aaron, it was Tommy, Sepp. Yeah, I don't remember, but like we were a big group starting in the morning, doing this one last main ridge of the Alps crossing flight to the goal. And then we all arrived there. Very, very impressive weather. Also the memories for me are still something that I have to, like digest. We basically looked at the whole Alps from a Google Earth perspective, zooming around like this from a crazy altitude. Like really, really cool. Like really, really cool and impressive race with a lot of flying experiences that like on a normal, like we started in the beginning, you would never experience outside of a race like that. And I think the most impressive overall thing, and this is also maybe motivating for the listeners to what the potential of this little gear is that we carry on our back. It's so impressive. Like I stand there at 1 p.m. in Marquardstein on the ground. I hike up to this little hill where this little ramp is. It's 300 meters vertical. And from 1 p.m., I start flying. I fly all across Germany, basically, to the highest, to the Zugspitze, land there, hike 100 meters up or 50 meters up, take the glider up, fly all the way to Ischgl and land there. Like, how impressive is that? That's like a drive. That's a 5-hour drive.
Just unbelievable.
By car.
Yeah, it's just.
And this is just the nature, the energy that is there. We can just use it with that little bit of cloth and get in like totally exposed to nature. We're not having any engine or anything. for me, this is so impressive. Like I go, this is the Markotstein is where Skywalk is. So whenever I drive there, I look at this and I'm like, wow, like, how cool is that? And there was just the one memorable thing like that. Every day was like that, but that was one of the most memorable. And then the other one being which pass is it, like, well, before Fish, the one pass, like 40 kilometers before getting to the Fish turn point, getting up in the morning there, running up to the pass, flying down, running for 20 or 30 kilometers in the flat up to Fish, and flying from Fish out to Niesen, land there, hike up 100 meters, do 1,200 meters vertical in 15 minutes by just flying up there, landing on the top, getting the turn point, then fly on to Mont Blanc, flying around Mont Blanc, and then, what is it?
Those who are listening who know where you're talking about, they're blown away. But for those of you who don't know these places, he's just covered half the Alps, basically. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's insane. I mean, when I was up there that day at Niesen watching you guys come through, there was, I think, just before you got there, it was Tommy, Simone, Tim Alongi, somebody else. They landed within seconds of one another on the top, literally just and it was blowing 20K. I mean, again, what I'm trying to speak to is the level. The level is incredible. So you're way into the race, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of K into the race at this point. They landed within Tim Alongi's doing helicopters, and of course, just being Tim, but they land on the top, and sign the board and take off seconds. And Toby was in that group. It was just, you couldn't even capture it. It was just, what the fuck is happening right now? They're just coming in out of the sky. I mean, they'd launched from right above Fruitigen, fly up there, hit the board, take off, and most of them flew around Mont Blanc that night.
I think really one thing to recommend at this point is go on Google Maps or go on Google Earth and type in Niesen or Interlaken. Type in Interlaken and Mont Blanc, and just look at the mountains in between, the distances in between. And we did that basically from midday till the evening in the paraglider.
And what I also love too about the race, I mean, in some ways, when we had less waypoints, I thought it was more interesting because you allowed the pilots to have a lot of creativity. In 2015, there was just hugely different lines being flown, which allowed for a lot of huge changes in the numbers and where people were. But it still happens. Damien's flight from Niesen to the Col du Petit Saint Bernard was so amazing to watch. It was so cool that basically everybody that took the more direct line that got stuck in the storm that night in Mont Blanc and couldn't press through, Pal and a bunch of others, and Damien flew the whole thing. I mean, he flew that line way to the north, and the turn point that we had in 21, Dente Oche, basically, he flew over that, and so creative, so cool. And it's neat that that kind of thing, especially in this race where everybody's basically flying together for a lot of it and using one another and thermaling together. And, that's just not something I've experienced in any of the races was that togetherness, just, 5 days into the race and 10 people together. It was amazing.
Yeah. No, definitely the most memorable moment of 2023 was that flight. First of all, to Niesen and then from Niesen around Mont Blanc, because I came there after the storm. When everybody got caught there, I was there afterwards.
You just flew right through.
And I made it around Mont Blanc and over them. Basically, I passed them all in the air that day. And I remember Tim and I were together at Cloud Base, almost 4,000 meters next to Mont Blanc. And I see this gap. like at Mont Blanc, and I think maybe I can just make it over there, you know, like cut that because there's an airspace. I cut the corner and I try it, and I go there to the Mont Blanc, which is this huge mountain. So you think it's closer and smaller than it actually is. So, and Tim stays on the cloud base. And when I come back, I'm 500 meters below him, and he's still up there. And I'm like, shit, there is no more lift. It's 8:30 or 8 p.m. And he goes and this perfect glide, and I follow him, and I'm like 500 meters lower, and there is this 20 kilometers ahead, and I mean we had an incredible glide. I see him. Okay, he will make it over. He will make it to around the Mont Blanc, and I'm like, shit, I just fucked it up. Sorry, because I used these 500 meters to check something out which didn't work, and suddenly in the middle of the valley, beep, 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 it starts beeping, and I go up 500 meters at 8:30 in the middle of the valley, in the middle of everything at 3,000 meters, going up another 500 meters or
So
600
special.
meters, and then having this tailwind and flying 60 k per hour over ground, just all the way around. Where you take on a normal cross country day, you take 3-4 hours of flying and work to go around.
Amazing.
So
So cool.
amazing memories.
Paul, what's next? You doing another one of these?
I don't say anything about that right now. We will see.
I know that Tom said in an interview afterwards, he said, if you could have weather like that, I'll do it for another 20 years. It was a special year. Obviously, can't expect that ever again, but it was.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that because I like other weather. But some days like that, I would definitely love to have again. But other days that were flyable, but there were days that were flyable and you could make a lot of distance, but it was really, really on the edge where I don't want to have to go flying. I better have rain and say nobody's flying, we walk, but not a condition where you can fly, but it's not. You shouldn't. You just shouldn't fly.
The day, the Damien, the next day, that after Col du Petit Saint Bernard, when Damien had his big day, but you guys all had big days. Man, I was watching the talkers on the top of the mountains. I mean, it was 50, 60 k an hour. It was just so far from recreational flying. I think that's again what the live tracking doesn't always really capture, and just so sketchy.
Yeah, I was on launch with Paul Guschlbauer that day, and Chrigel was on the next mountain, and everybody was around because that was the day when I caught up the day before, and I remember being up there and we checked the weather stations, and like you said, you look at the weather stations where we have to go, and it's 60 k per hour wind, and you have to go right there, and then we start flying, and we start flying, and it works. You train this, and you see, I'm here, and it works. I'm not in danger. Everything's fine. But you look on the ground, and you see the shadows of the clouds moving super fast on the ground, away from the mountains. And this was very, very special, very, very scary somehow. And you go on with all these guys around, and there's Paul Guschlbauer, the pro, and there's Patrick von Kenel, the pro, and everybody's pro, and everybody knows what he's doing, right? And we all fly together straight into the deepest mountain, the highest mountains of the Alps, with 50, 60 k of north wind on the south side. And
it ain't right, man.
It's
it ain't right.
that's what I would call be in the moment and don't think about it.
Yeah, you don't really want to think about it because at some point it's not going to be that nice. You see the trees all bent over.
Yeah,
you're waiting for it. You're waiting for it. But yeah, crazy. Paul, thank you, man.
Wow, that was the longest podcast I've ever done. I hope somebody gets to this point. Maybe you can write me a personal message or in some comment, hey, I listened all the way to 1 hour and 40.
Yeah, right. Yeah. My editor keeps saying, you got to keep it to an hour. You got to keep it to an hour. We're an hour and 54. So we'll try to keep it under 2, I guess. But Paul, that was really special. If you keep doing this, then if we do another memory lane, we have to start at 2025 because it will take us way too long to get through it. But thanks, man. That was it was great to catch up with you and hear your perspectives, and excited about what you and Aaron are doing. Congratulations there, and look forward to seeing you, man. It's always special.
Thanks, Gavin, and I'm looking forward to have an interview chat with you on my podcast. Thanks for the invitation once again.
Thanks, man. If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind-the-scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So, for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you'll be in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.